Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm here today to do another catch-up review. And these are some reviews for books that I read during the time where I wasn't making videos. So they might be a little bit sketchy in the fact that I wasn't reading them with the anticipation of talking about them. But given that they are books that I'm reading for particular projects, including my Shannon Reads Those Books exploration and my Sci-Fi Fantasy and Weird exploration, I felt like they deserved their own video, even if my memory of the book is not that great. So we're just gonna roll with it. And this is a title that was on both my Those Books and Sci-Fi Fantasy and Weird list. And just for some context, I started the Shannon Reads Those Books project back in 2014. And I am working my way through lists of classic, iconic, zeitgeist, highly referenced, this is definitely highly referenced, and influential works, the goal of which is to gain cultural context for those titles, as well as to increase my reading comprehension. And the Sci-Fi Fantasy and Weird exploration I started back in 2016 when I recognized that although I love science fiction and fantasy and was curious about what weird was, I wasn't actually reading a lot of titles for those genres. So being the person that I am, I made a list and I am working my way through that list. And the goal of that is to sort of, one, enjoy the genres, as well as gain some context of titles within those genres. And this definitely is a classic. It is on both of those lists. It is the 52nd title I have read for the Shannon Reads Those Books exploration, and is the 34th title for the Sci-Fi Fantasy and Weird exploration. This was published back in 1898, so 122 years ago. 122 years ago. Wow. It definitely falls under the genre of science fiction. And it is also known for the sort of radio drama situation that happened in the 30s, or that Orson Welles narrated a broadcast, and apparently people thought it was real and that there actually was an alien invasion. Although I remember when I read this, I was reading around it and I heard some references that actually wasn't based on this. But then when I looked it up recently on Wikipedia, it does say that this book influenced that. So I am not sure exactly what happened. And apparently now it's considered that the public wasn't as concerned or taken in by the fact that there was a real alien invasion. So I don't know. I guess it's up for debate. This is actually, I think, lesser known for one of the things I found out when I was researching it. When it was published in the U.S., it was serialized, and it was published in Cosmopolitan. Can you believe it? Cosmopolitan is where this was serialized in the U.S. Wow. Anyway, I read this back in March 2020, and I ended up giving it an 8 out of 10. I've read several H.G. Wells titles by now. The first one I ever read for this project was The Time Machine, and I think this is the third, because I've also read The Invisible Man, and there's still a couple to go. There's several, lots of his works are on the Sci-Fi Fantasy and Weird list, and this one happens to be also on those books. So this one is classic alien invasion, and I don't know if you do call it classic when it's one of the first ones that did it. It really is. Aliens land on Earth, and they have laser beams, and there's destruction and chaos, and people go into survival mode in different ways that survival mode happens. So it's the classic, alien invasion story. So I'm trying to ask, and one of my questions I always ask myself is, why did I choose it? And I actually have no idea. I don't know if there was a particular reason I wanted to read this at that time, maybe because it was a shorter work or that it was on both lists. So that is crappy answer. It's one of those challenging things because I have seen the influence of this in so many other things, whether it be the actual films that it was made into, or just that it influenced other science fiction stories in multiple mediums. But I do like to always read the source, so maybe that's why. Not sure, maybe. The next question I always have is, did I understand it? And then again, that one's a bit of a hard one to answer because I already knew the story, but it was a bit different than I was expecting, which is my next question. Whoops, I just jumped. Because we follow one person, and So I did understand it. I will say that there were parts of it that were harder to understand. That's more about the fact that it was written 122 years ago. I do find H.G. Wells sometimes a little bit hard to retain. Like, it seems like I remember it, I know it in the moment, but then I don't always retain it, and that just happens to me with some older works, which is one of the reasons why I like to keep them in the mix, because it does work the muscle of reading. So yeah, but I did understand it. There were some parts that were a little sketchier, but it was hard to, sometimes it was hard to process. And I will say I didn't read this at a great time. I read it in March, and I read it just sort of like right before COVID. So you were starting to get these, like, in the news, it started to be, oh wow, this is looking kind of serious. And so I was reading this at that time, and it was before people were self-isolating, or like maybe it was starting to be the time in which people were recommended to self-isolate, but we weren't sort of in quarantine. And that's sort of, because this is survivalist, there is sort of those themes for it. So it was not great timing to be reading it, like, at all. So yeah, so I did, but I would say that I did understand it, but I didn't really enjoy it. And that's mostly because I don't tend to like survivalist works. I find them so hard. Right? They're so hard, and people can, they often can show people doing horrible things. I didn't feel like this one did that. There was one situation that was, like, not the aliens. That's scary, of course. But there was one situation, like a human-to-human situation, which is often something science fiction explores, where... so I'm going to talk a little bit about a particular scene here. So if you don't want any spoilers, but I'm going to give it out of context, but a little bit. But there's just like one scene or one moment, like one sort of piece where the protagonist is decided to sort of work with someone. But of course they're, everyone's scared and wants to fend for themselves a little bit, but they start to sort of work together and sort of see if they can do that. And then you can start to see that the other person's morals are different than the protagonist, and the tension that arises out of that, and sort of the idea or need to be able to get out of a situation. And can you get out of a situation like that safely? Oh my gosh, the tension of all of that. It's one of the reasons why I don't watch a lot of survivalist stuff anymore, whether it's zombies or whatever, like on TV, like TV and movies. I'm just like, besides the whole gender dynamic that can be horrible in science fiction or survivalist fiction, which didn't really come up in this one. But it's just that sort of like, the like societal norms are gone because everyone's fending for themselves. And so each person you encounter, you have to sort of like figure out and establish, or are you going to be able to work together? Or are you going to be able to, are you going to try and steal from each other? Or are you going to support each other? Like, it's just, oh my God, the tension. I don't like it. It doesn't work for me. So anyway, but one thing that was on the side of this one was that it wasn't that long. I think it was like 180 pages. So it didn't last that long. Like, I felt like the tension built and built and built, but it didn't crush my heart. It didn't crush my heart. So yeah. So I wouldn't say that I enjoyed it. I am glad that I read it. I do like reading sort of like things that are sort of like source materially. So I got something out of it from that perspective. And it was what I expected from the sort of alien invasion, but I didn't actually expect that much about humanity in terms of those relationships and trying to negotiate those relationships. I didn't know that would be so much of a theme. Another question I have is, will I read more from the author? And yes, I will. I do. I think I have at least The Island of Dr. Moreau on some of my lists, but that might be it. I don't know if there's more H.G. Wells. I'm trying to think of what else he's written, but I've already read 3. So I'm trying not to do too many repeat authors, but there is the completist in me is like, oh, if there's only one more. So another question I always have is it the genre that we think it is? And I would say yes, it is. It is science fiction without question. Like, there's aliens, but it is also survivalist fiction, which is definitely a theme in science fiction. And so those are my thoughts on The War of the Worlds. Let me know your thoughts on that. Have you read it? Would you read it? Have you seen the adaptations? I know it's so funny because the one that sticks out the most clearly to me is the the Tom Cruise one from like 2005, but I know that there's an earlier one. But in terms of films, I think my mind goes to The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is a different story. But it does have a similar, you know, like it's also an alien invasion one, but it's different. And I actually really like the original, The Day the Earth Stood Still. I like that one a lot. But I can't remember off the top of my head if I've seen an earlier War of the Worlds movie. I know there has been. It's a story that's been done again and again and again. So there you go. And I think that actually catches me up to date for my Sci-Fi Fantasy and Weird and Those Books titles. Oh, I do have a Those Books one, but I don't know if I'm going to talk about it because I don't have too much to say. I'm not sure if I'm reading any right now. I'm not sure. That was the end of this list, so I hope that you enjoyed it. I will leave links down below for my Goodreads shelves for these two projects if you're curious to see what else is on the titles. The Sci-Fi Fantasy and Weird is about 200 titles, and the Those Books project is over 400 titles. So there's a lot to go. Even though I'm making good progress, there's a lot to go. I don't think I'll ever finish the entirety of those books, but Sci-Fi Fantasy and Weird, it is possible. I've read, I think, about 80 of 200, so I not like, that seems possible. 120 books, I could do that, maybe, at some point, over a long period of time. I don't know. So anyway, that's all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon with another video.